Good morning. My name is Pereira, and I'm a City Councilwoman of the 138th District, and I'm joined by my colleague, City Council Member Anita Martinez from the 139th District, and Mike DeFilippo from the 133rd District, and members of our community. I want to be absolutely clear that we are not here to disparage the current acting chief of police in any way. The acting chief of police was born and raised in Bridgeport, has lived here their entire life, has dedicated over 25 years of their life to the Bridgeport PD as a public servant, and risen through the ranks in a profession dominated by men. The acting chief is to be commended for her accomplishments. That being said, the City of Bridgeport, the Bridgeport Police Department, and the residents of Bridgeport were shocked to learn both our Chief of Police and Civil Service Director were both arrested and indicted on September 10th due to their involvement in the rigged and fraudulent appointment of Armando Perez as the permanent Chief of Police on November 13, 2018. We are here to discuss the failure of Mayor Ganim to adhere to the city charter by appointing a permanent Chief of Police from the active employment list, in which there are two legitimate, highly qualified candidates that completed a lengthy and rigorous process to rank amongst the top 3 finalists. One could also argue that whoever ranked 4th on the employment list should be considered. Mayor Ganim asserts he was completely innocent and had absolutely no involvement in the illegal and rigged process that made Armando Perez the Chief of Police. That being said, you would think Mayor Ganim would want to do everything in his power to right the egregious wrong that was committed against the people of Bridgeport and the legitimate 3 finalists by appointing one of these highly qualified and respected candidates as permanent Chief of Police as required in the city charter. Instead, he chose to appoint an acting Chief of Police that did not participate in the National Chief of Police search in 2018, therefore is not a finalist on the current employment list. Mayor Ganim allowed Armando Perez to serve as acting Chief of Police for 986 days, which was just unacceptable. The city charter requires the Chief of Police to reside in Bridgeport, and although Armando Perez made a commitment to move into Bridgeport as a condition of his employment as Chief of Police, 21 months into serving as Chief of Police, he had yet to move into Bridgeport. How can Mayor Ganim justify appointing an acting Chief of Police when taxpayers funded a national Chief of Police search, which resulted in 8 qualified candidates at a cost of $17,000? Why should we spend another up to $20,000 on a national Chief of Police search when there is a current list of highly qualified finalists that includes former New Haven Assistant Chief Louis Casanova and our homegrown Captain Roderick Porter, who possesses the added advantage of being a longtime resident of Bridgeport? The Bridgeport Police Department is in turmoil, with our rank-and-file frontline police officers experiencing poor morale during a time of unprecedented civil unrest, significant incidents of violent crime, and the added burden of a pandemic, with Bridgeport leading Connecticut with the most residents diagnosed with COVID-19. The Bridgeport Police Department needs and deserves a highly qualified permanent Chief of Police to lead the organization through an unprecedented time of turbulence, to stabilize the agency, to restore the reputation and credibility of the Bridgeport PD within the community and throughout the state, and to ensure that there is a high level of confidence amongst our residents that public safety is not in jeopardy or at risk. The city charter is not just a bunch of words on paper to be disregarded at will. It is Bridgeport's Constitution. Voters went to the polls and voted to ratify the city charter. By doing so, they decided this is how we want to be governed, and this is how we want government to work. Therefore, we are calling on Mayor Ganim to adhere to the city charter, Chapter 13, Police Section 4.3, which states, whenever a vacancy arises in the position of Chief of Police, the Personnel Director shall, upon request, certify to the Mayor the names of 3 candidates standing highest upon the appointment list for such position. We know the appointment list is valid because on page 19 of the indictment in United States of America versus Armando Perez and David Dunn, G68 states, On or about October 19, 2018, Consultant 1 provided the rankings to David Dunn, the defendant, who certified the 3 highest ranked candidates, including Perez, to the mayor. And under the city charter, Civil Service Section 211 states, the commission shall cancel such portion of any list as has been enforced for more than 2 years. Given that today is September 16, 2020, and the list is valid through at least October 18, 2020, Mayor Ganem must appoint one of the highly qualified finalists as the permanent chief of police to a 5-year contract. If Mayor Ganem truly cares about the dedicated police officers of the Bridgeport Police Department, the taxpayers, residents, and business owners of Bridgeport, he will put politics aside, adhere to the city charter, and immediately appoint a permanent chief of police that Bridgeport can believe in. After this national embarrassment, chaos, and upheaval, Bridgeport is entitled to no less. And now I'd like to introduce my colleague, City Councilwoman Anita Martinez from the 139th District.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Today, we are here for one purpose and one purpose only. We as elected officials have failed in many areas where we should have been more involved in when it comes to making the right decision here in the city of Bridgeport. In lieu of the recent arrest, of Chief of Police and Director of Civil Service, we stand here today to make sure that we act on appropriate measures. Our police department is currently in crisis, chaos, and turmoil. We have had no stability in any areas of our police department. We must follow the city charter to the fullest measures. We continue to fail our taxpayers and our residents here in the city of Bridgeport. They have no faith or trust in us. We cannot continue to run an operation of politics in each area. We must move on integrity and all the right reasons along with dignity and respect. Everything here in Bridgeport has been nothing but turmoil. We have individuals in positions that should not be in those positions. We have leaders who are not leading or making the proper decisions. Today is the day that we must take a stance and make the right decision. The other 2 finalists are the qualifying members to take the office of Chief of Police. Captain Porter from Bridgeport, and then Assistant Police Chief Louis Casanova. We are the only city that does not follow the charter, ordinance, or resolution, only in Bridgeport. In order to eliminate any more taxpayer dollars, we must stand today and do the right thing. Follow the charter. The chief exams still have an opportunity until October 18, 2020. We cannot continue to place anyone in positions that do not meet standards or qualifications of positions. Do we have the money in the city of Bridgeport to keep dumping on lawsuits? On another note, immediate action must be taken on placing participant and witness in the case on administrative leave ASAP. Thank you.
Can we ask a question?
Yeah, any questions?
Yes, I'd like to ask about the mechanics. How would this actually work based on the city charter? What number did Garcia rank the list? I assume she was somewhere.
No.
And how she was not on the list at all?
Garcia, in order, if you look, you have in your press packets the qualifications that were required for the National Police Search. In order to even qualify to take the exam, you had to have 5 years of command experience, which in Bridgeport would mean you had to be a captain or above for 5 years. Garcia did not meet that requirement in 2018, and she does not meet that requirement today.
So she's nowhere on the list.
Nowhere. She never even applied. She couldn't apply.
So according to the city charter, and you're very good with this, Maria, how would the transfer actually work if the mayor were to follow through and yield to your demand?
Okay, so she's appointed acting.
Yes.
You could be acting for 24 hours, or we saw somebody was acting for 986 days. The mayor can contact the 3 finalists and decide which one he wants and swear in a permanent police chief tomorrow, if he wanted to. The acting has no guarantee of being acting for a certain period of time. But the point is, he just as quickly as he had her swear in as acting police chief, right? 24 hours after, a little over 24 hours after the arrest, and less than 24 hours after Chief Perez resigned, Rebecca was quickly sworn in, correct? So it's clear that if the mayor wanted to swear in, let's say, Captain Porter at 5 o'clock today, he could do that.
Okay, and you're saying there's no more money for lawsuits, but would this lead to a lawsuit?
Well,
in
I
years?
think the reality is we know that Captain Porter has a lawsuit claiming that this process was rigged, that he was a more qualified candidate, that he was discriminated against. Certainly, and I'm not a legal professional, I think it would be very hard for him to lose that lawsuit right now. In addition, we have 4 captains and a deputy chief who have sued the city because their assertion is that Rebecca Garcia wasn't even qualified to be assistant chief, because if you look at the assistant chief position that was advertised, but if you look at the assistant chief that was advertised, the last time it was filled, it required 5 years of command experience, captain and above. So she doesn't have the 5 years of experience of captain and above for assistant chief, and she doesn't have it for permanent police chief. And the charter says, even if you appoint an acting, they have to meet the qualifications of a permanent chief to be appointed acting. I think if this is not resolved, we're going to see even more litigation. And in the end, you know who pays for that, right? Incredibly overburdened taxpayers of Bridgeport. And the amount of legal fees and settlements that they have already paid due to the turmoil that has existed in the Bridgeport Police Department for years now, has been incredible. I've been on the South City Council since December. Just the Colorado Avenue incident for the Halloween party, the City Council has already made settlements over $500,000 on that one incident. One. So this department has been in turmoil. It continues to be in turmoil. Certainly the morale of the rank and file here has just been decimated. And so in order to resolve that, and I would ask you this, if they prevail on their lawsuits against our current chief of police, what further turmoil does that create if she has to be ousted? Period. Now what?
Maria, who is number 4 on that
That's the question. That was never made public. There were 8 finalists that were given, who came through the process. 8 finalists. Under the city charter, the 3 highest ranking are given to the mayor. We know that AJ Perez was in that final 3 fraudulently. So the question does become, who's number 4 on that list? Because in essence, they certainly should have been in the top 3.
And have you spoken to either Captain Porter or Casanova? How do you know they still want the job?
I don't. But I do know that Captain Porter is very well respected in this community. He's here today. He lives in Bridgeport, and he's well respected among his colleagues, his peers, and this community.
But he is suing.
He is suing, but doesn't it appear that his lawsuit has a lot of legitimacy at this point? I mean, it does appear that his lawsuit has a significant amount of legitimacy. If you were smart, in my opinion, you would sit down with potentially Captain Porter, if that's who you're selecting, and saying, we're ready, we'll appoint you a police chief, the lawsuit goes away, we pay all your legal fees, because you should, and then you squash what I think at this point could be a devastating judgment against Bridgeport.
Have you had any communication with the mayor to know, he could come back and say, I appointed my city needed a police chief, I appointed an acting police chief, but I am considering the permanent option.
No, he has not said that, and I just want to be clear. Why would you appoint an acting police chief when you have 3 highly qualified candidates who are incredibly well respected, who went through a rigorous process? And if you read the 25-page affidavit, the FBI consistently says we found no evidence that any other finalist was involved in this scheme. They repeatedly state it. So those people legitimately qualified in the top 3. Why would you appoint an acting when you have 3 highly qualified people who went through a 4-month rigorous process, exams, written, oral, interviews? They all have associates or above. Captain Porter has a master's and an associate's, including criminal justice. He has FBI certifications. He lives here, which was a big problem with Chief Perez, who promised as a condition of employment he was going to relocate to Bridgeport. Did that ever happen? 21 months he was in his position before the arrest. He had never moved into Bridgeport. So that's a requirement in the charter. Yes, Chris Caruso, former state rep Chris Caruso would like to speak.
My name is Chris Caruso. I'm a former state representative from Bridgeport and the former House Chair of the Government Administration Elections Committee. This comes down to one simple thing. The building right behind all of you is City Hall. In January, the mayor, with his family Bible, put his left hand on the Bible, raised his right hand. He swore that he would uphold the laws and ordinances of this city and of the state of Connecticut. At this point, he is in violation of the rule of law. Now, as the chief executive officer of the city, as a former attorney, he understands the rule of law. And when you violate the law, you have to correct it. And he has the opportunity to correct it at this point. Anything short of that is not acceptable. He knew what he was doing when he appointed the acting chief. He wasn't doing it just to, move things along. He wanted her, apparently. And this isn't about her, it's about the rule of law. Either the charter exists, either rules exist, either laws exist, or they don't exist. You can't expect people in the city to adhere to the rule of law when the chief executive officer decides to flaunt that law. So he has an opportunity to correct this situation, follow the charter, and to adhere to the rule of law. And if he asks you something different, or if he tells you something different, ask him to pull out that family Bible that his father held right here at City Hall, right behind you, that he swore on. Now, either that oath of office means something or it doesn't. And if it doesn't mean anything, then he should resign immediately. Because if we're setting an example for people in this city and across the state, the rule of law means something. And so that's what this all boils down to. It doesn't involve Captain Porter or Acting Chief Garcia or anyone else. It's the rule of law. And he's a lawyer, and he had city attorneys that advised him. The rule of law is simple. Follow it, honor it, whether you like it or not, whether you accept it or not, that's the rule. If you want to change the law, then you change it legitimately. He did not change it. The law is there. Follow the law. And it's about time people in this city start holding this mayor accountable to the law. You don't take an office, you don't take an oath of office and then flaunt the law. That's the problem in Bridgeport. That's been the problem right along, and it's happening from this mayor, our chief executive officer. If he decides the law means nothing, then others can argue the same thing. That's what this is about, ladies and gentlemen. It's about the law. Thank you.
At the same time, your clock is running down if those search results expire next month. So what is your plan of action if you are
October
not able
19th is, 18th is more than how many weeks away?
over
Over a month. There's more than enough time. If the mayor today can do it today, he can make
If
it.
you could swear in Rebecca within 24 hours of the chief's resignation, he has 32 days right now to address this outrageous behavior. We don't need an acting chief. There's no basis for an acting chief. We need a permanent police chief now. Bridgeport residents deserve that. Taxpayers deserve that. Our police officers deserve that. They have experienced tremendous chaos over the last few years. I mean, this has become a national embarrassment. This has made national news. And 90% of the people in Bridgeport are amazing, decent people. It's people like the mayor and those people aligned with the mayor who do a disservice to the hardworking and honest people of Bridgeport and these police officers.
Just one last question. Could you step up to the microphone
Yeah.
also? I get the impression from speaking to the mayor without quoting him directly and from other officials in his office, they do not lend much credence, if any, to this claim. So where do you go from here? So another lawsuit.
It is as
Announce yourself.
my name is Calvin Ayala. I'm a concerned resident, business owner, and investor here in the city of Bridgeport. It is as easy as the city council writing a resolution asking the mayor Ganem to step down and resign. As long as the city council passes that resolution, Mayor Ganem must resign. That will be what's next. There's nothing left.
So if the mayor doesn't play ball, you're going to demand his resignation as a panel.
I said that as a concerned resident. The mayor serves at the pleasure of the city council, who was elected by the constituents of this city. It is not the other way around.
Frank, it's not about playing ball. It's
Right,
about
Chris.
following the law.
It's about compliance.
It's as simple as that.
We're
And if
simply-
he doesn't, then probably a group of citizens will bring an action against him in court. And isn't it a shame that as citizens, we have to take that next step? He has city attorneys, he has at his disposal legal advice. This is why the corruption occurs in Bridgeport. This is why the lawlessness occurs, because the lack of adherence to the law.
Will you guys demand his resignation?
I've already demanded his resignation.
You have. As a city council.
I demanded his resignation earlier this week.
As the city council.
I can only
Can you
speak-
just step up here, please? Thank you.
Maria Pereira can only speak for Maria Pereira. I was the first elected official in the city to call for Joe Ganem's resignation, and I called for it today. Mayor Ganem is lawless. I also say we have the most lawless law department in the state. It's a lawless mayor, it's a lawless administration, and the people of Bridgeport deserve so much better. And if he really cared about the city, if he really cared about the people that he supposedly represents, and if he really cares about these police officers, he would simply resign. Honestly, he should simply resign and let this city move forward and heal from an administration that has been nothing but tumultuous. It's deja vu for many of us. This is Joe Ganem 2 is no different than Joe Ganem 1.
Councilwoman, fair to say that if the mayor does not choose from your list within the next month, as that list is active, that you, within your group, will initiate a legal response?
Let me be clear. I'm not going to speak for other people. We are giving him the opportunity to do what's required under the city charter and to fix it. And then you make decisions if he doesn't do that. But I will tell you this. If you don't think the current litigation that already exists by the 4 captains and the assistant chief, the deputy chief, and by Captain Porter in his own private litigation, claiming, he was discriminated against and so forth, is going to now include this? Of course it is. Of course, there's a valid employment list. And we know it's valid from the indictment written by the FBI. I don't think anybody here is going to question that the FBI put in the affidavit the first day that David Dunn received that list. You can't certify it until you receive it. So even he could have certified it the 19th, the 20th. We know that the Connecticut Post ran a huge article October 23rd announcing that the mayor had received the 3 finalists. So somewhere between the 19th and probably the 22nd, that list was certified. So we're taking the worst possible date for us, the 19th. So the charter is the law. It's our Constitution. I hope we agree that, our elected officials can't just disregard the Connecticut Constitution. Hopefully we can't disregard our United States Constitution. This is no different. Voters, not even a few voters ratify this at the polls. They said, yes, this is how we want government to work. This is how we want to be governed. How can anybody who says they represent the people that go to the polls and elect them, how can anybody say it's okay to flaunt this, to disregard it, when the very people they represent are the ones who voted to say, this is how we want government to run in our city? Pereira.
The lawsuit would be coming from me and other interested people if the mayor decides not to follow. Yeah, the lawsuit would come from me and other aggrieved members of the Bridgeport community if the mayor decides not to adhere to the law. I'd have standing because I voted for that charter change. I have standing because I'm a citizen of this city and aggrieved by the mayor's actions. So if he decides not to honor the law, if he decides to flaunt the law, then he'll be looking at an action in court. It's sad that that's the way we'd have to do it. We'd bring an injunction first in order to stop them from the October 18th date running out, and then we would bring him into court. And I think we'd have support from many citizens that I've spoken to, but frankly, I've spent my life fighting against corruption in this city, in the legislature, and I'm just not going to. I was the first elected official back in 2003 to call for the mayor to resign after the first Ganem 1 corruption acts that we saw. And it's 2020, and I'm here again. I'm just not an elected official any longer, but I'm a former, and it's all over again happening. And back then, there was this call to judgment, to forgive and to embrace him. I'm not willing to do that. The law is the law, and we'll take him to court if necessary. That's for me and other concerned citizens in this city.
Young man, what is your name?
Thank you for the comment, young man. I do appreciate it.
Sorry, Chris, I was talking to the guy behind
That's all
you.
right. Oh, there you go. And he's wearing a nicer
Below the
suit, too.
spotlight.
Okay.
What's he talking about, Kelvin?
Kelvin,
Kelvin? Yeah.
Kelvin?
Kelvin.
He's a business owner here too.
Okay, Kelvin, your last name again?
Ayala, Ayala.
Thank you.
I just wanted to say make one more point, that with what we know today of what had taken place with the Director of Civil Service, that may have impacted other candidates that may have been able to have qualified for the chief's exam should this exam had not been tampered with. Other individuals within our police department perhaps may have had the qualifications at hand to apply for such position, which we do know we have individuals here that do qualify for to be a chief or an acting chief. And you know what? And I'm totally against this acting chief or assistant chief position, only because before Joseph Gaudette left the police department, that position was eliminated. When it came before the council, and yes, we did vote on it, we were misled by the actions that were given to us by our city attorney's office. And when I read my statement, that's why I addressed it as we need to take more accountability on what we decide on as elected officials, because we have been prompt to be puppets of simply saying yes to everything here in the city of Bridgeport. I research, not as intense as Maria does. I do my homework before I cast votes, and I have made good decisions and I have made bad decisions. Today, my decision is that our mayor steps up and does the right thing. And that's all that I'm here for. I'm not here to bash the acting chief. I'm not here to bash the mayor. Follow the charter, something that we have not done here in the city of Bridgeport in many areas outside of what we are here today for. Thank you.
Just for clarity, I thought Casanova was the head of the Capitol.
He is.
So somebody said he was still.
Can I say?
Somebody said he was still assistant chief.
He
Not
resigned.
here.
Let me just be quiet. Since he was a finalist in 2018, he retired from the New Haven Police Department, and he was ranked 1 on a search to be the head of the Capitol Police. That doesn't mean he's no longer a valid candidate here. They could offer him the job, and he could certainly say, I decline it. I've taken on a role that I'm pleased with, that gives me more. That's his decision. He is a legitimate finalist on the list, legitimate. So he ranked number 1 legitimately. We know that AJ ranked 2 illegitimately, and we know that Captain Porter ranked 3. Again, the question is, who was number 4 on that list? Because in my mind, they should also be considered to be equitable and fair. But whether,
Why don't we know?
because it was never announced, and it is public record.
You guys have the power to
You have the
request
power.
that
There were
information.
8 finalists. 8 finalists ranked 1 through 8. The Post only ever wrote about the top 3. So nobody really knows who 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 is. But I think most people would agree that the person ranked number 4 should be considered, because we know that AJ Perez did not legitimately qualify in the top 3. I think this is just about just do what's right. Just do what's right. Do right by the law. Do right by these candidates who went through a lengthy, rigorous process to qualify into the finalists, and do right by the very people you were elected to serve. That's really what this is about.